Hello to everybody that has registered for this really exciting presentation that we've put together for you guys today. If you have been joining us previously for our country webinars, you know that we've been pretty general in the kinds of information that we've been giving to you. But over the course of the last couple of weeks, what we've found is that people are asking, okay, that's great. I know where I want to go. I know where I want to be. Now what? And so we're bringing this presentation to you as a follow-up on what the 4 targeted steps are for you to do next in order to plant your flag in a new country. So we are going to let everybody get joined up here. Sometimes Zoom needs to do an update. People need to get connected to audio and visual and things like that. So while they are doing that, I just want to give you all a second to get familiar with your control panel. It's probably at the bottom of your screen there. If you're joining us on a laptop, mobile devices may be a little bit different, but get comfortable with those controls. Find the Q&A section. That is a great place for you to drop questions. As they come to mind, drop them into that Q&A and we will get them answered at the end of the presentation. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and get started with our first poll. And just a note here, we have 2 polls in this presentation. They are both designed to really structure and help propel the presentations and future information that we send to you guys so that it's relevant to what your goals are. So first poll here is, what do you hope to take with you from this presentation? What do you hope to take with you? What do you hope to gain? What kind of knowledge is it that you're looking for to take away with you? Are you looking for your next steps to find your personal or financial freedom? Are you looking for a clear and easy to follow method to secure a Plan B residency? Are you looking for recommendations on property, on home ownership? What about attorneys, banks? Are you narrowing in the best place to plant your flag? Maybe you have been doing some research on your own and you just haven't quite found that perfect fit for you. And maybe you just have so many questions, you don't know really where to start. And so you're hoping that we can help narrow in on those things for you here today. And I hope we do too. I hope you all gain something to take away with you when you go out there after this presentation and you do some more research, that we've given you some really important things to consider and which direction to go with those. So as everybody's answering here, I see a lot of folks are actually looking for recommendations on property, attorneys, and banks. So we will have some of those here for you today, so stay tuned. Next steps to finding your personal or financial freedom. And that all means something a little bit different for folks. So we'll definitely dive a little bit deeper into that. Of course, being this is the 4 steps webinar, we are going to give you a method to follow in order to plant your flag and find your freedoms. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Thank you all for joining us again today. My name is Ali Rodriguez. I am a citizen of the US. I was a transplant from the great state of Texas about 4.5 years ago. I left San Antonio and moved to actually the country of Belize. Of course, you become the black sheep of your family. They don't understand why you want to leave the States or your current country to go somewhere new and foreign, and just that's not normal. At least that's what I was told, and that's what my family thought. But you know, I have never really regretted my choice. And I fell in love with Belize after a visit there. And now, just about 4 months ago, moved and transplanted myself to Panama City. So I'm joining you from Panama City today after becoming a permanent resident of Belize. Lots more to that story, of course, that I'd be happy to share with you on my personal journey. But we have so much to cover today, and I want to make sure that you all have time to join us for the full presentation. So with me here, we have Patrick Hebert. Patrick, tell us a little bit about you.
Thanks, Ellie. I'm excited about today's webinar, and my voice broke there. I must be really excited. But we've got with several hundred people registered for this. That's exciting, and obviously it's important to people. And we've done a lot of presentations in the last couple months, I guess, on the different countries of Central America mostly. And a lot of feedback was, okay, great, we appreciate that. Glad you weren't selling us stuff in those, but now we really need to know, what are the steps I need to take. So that's what this one's about. I'm a Canadian, and was lucky enough to sell a software company in the late 90s, early 2000s, and just in my journey to get down here, started coming down to Central America. Well, Mexico early in the 90s or late 80s actually, but coming to Central America more so in the early 2000s and bringing my kids down, and ended up being I started with Nicaragua, and I really loved the country, and ended up becoming a resident there, and now resident in Panama, work permits in Belize and things like that. But really, because of the work that we do, we're all over the place down here. But I promised we were going to keep this one short. I hold my promise and not talk too much about ourselves. So.
All right. And also with us next to Patrick, there is Andrea Martinez. Andrea, welcome. Tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you, Ali. I'm very excited as well to be part of this webinar and talk about our experiences here in Central America. Me, as a Latin America, I was born in Ecuador, so I come from a big family. Like, we have tons of uncles, cousins, my parents, my sister, we always see each other. So for me, it was very difficult to make the move to another country. But in a way, I felt at ease because I was going to go to a country that it has the same culture, right? The family-oriented culture, to see that you can see your friends. And practically when I moved to Nicaragua, even though we are Hispanic and we have a very similar culture, I was still scared because every country has its own identity, its own way of living, it's people that I don't know, but that was something that when I went there, it was a really nice experience, very enriching, meeting all the people, being able to do medical missions. That's why I went the first place to Nicaragua to do medical missions in a foundation that Patrick founded. And after that, I really liked it. That was the kind of work that I wanted to do. And really, I made like another family here in Latin America. So it is nice to see that even though we have different cultures, like Patrick has a different culture than mine. I talk to my parents every day, and for him, that's very different. But it was very easy for both of us to make that change and to live in these countries. And it's great to be able to share that with all of you folks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you mentioned family, because you do become a family with these new people that you find, and you bring them into your tribe. So we kind of alluded to this a little bit in the beginning, but you may have tuned into our other webinars, and this isn't that. This isn't going to be general to a country. It's going to be 4 steps that you can take in any country, essentially, to get that freedom that you're looking for. So you want to know where to turn, you want to know who to turn to. And the reason why we take so much time to introduce ourselves, and here in a minute we'll talk a little bit about who Eco Villages is because we want you to be comfortable and confident in us. And a part of that is knowing how do you guys know? What kind of expert can you say you are? What have you done that would make me place my trust in you to give me good advice? So we've been there, we've done it, and a couple of times in a couple of different places. So we're happy to share our experiences with you, and also the lessons that we learned along the way. So Patrick, tell us a little bit about Eco Villages and kind of the philosophy around this business, this company.
Yeah, sure, Ellie. I mean, one of the things, just to step back a minute, there's people on this webinar that joined from all over the world, right? And then there's a plan B options and all these things that can be done in any place in any continent. We're experts in Central America, Latin America region, and that's where we focus on. And I chose that because of numerous reasons. I mean, I'm Canadian, and so climate was certainly part of that reason. But there's other ones where when you're thinking about it, time zones. Right? We're on the same time zones as my family that's still up in Canada, so our friends, you can talk to them, whether on WhatsApp or whatever. We're awake at the same time of day, and all the different things, different reasons. But But that's not to diminish at all. People might want to choose Portugal or something like that, and that everybody certainly has the right to do so. We're kind of like I said, a specialist in this region, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But really, we won't belabor the point on eco villages. That's where we work. I'm one of the co-founders with my son, and we've created a company that does design communities around the region. And the communities are focused on sort of 4 pillars, and one being minimalist. And that's not to mean that we're always making tiny homes, although tiny homes are a part of our repertoire, I guess. But we make estate homes, 4 or 5 bedroom homes as well. But making the best use of the space, to us, it's important. My son and I lived on a boat for a few years, and really realized how the efficient use of space is important. Eco sensibility, and if you've seen our other webinars, we talk a little bit more about this, but we coined that term eco sensibility as opposed to being like it is our version of eco-friendly, and we're not eco-fanatic. We make practical eco-friendly decisions to build into the homes that we have, that we design. And self-sustainability is huge these days. I mean, with all the things going on in the world, people are really trying to be more sustaining, less reliant on governments and corporations around them, and that's a big part of our philosophy as well. And finally, liberty. And frankly, we're not pulling any punches. I'll be honest, but we are freedom lovers. 5 years ago, if you said, as a libertarian, if you said, I believe in freedom, I want to have, that's an important part of my life. People, of course, today you say that and you potentially get canceled or censored, and it's just a bit crazy. But we're creating communities for like-minded people that aren't into the divisiveness, people that would like to be able to sit down at dinner with some friends and talk about things, watch the sunset, and it doesn't matter what you talk about. You might not agree on all of them, but you can talk about them and not feel like you're being, kicked out of the conversation or canceled. So, these are sort of the 4 pillars of the philosophy that we design communities around. And like I said, we won't focus too much on eco villages today. It's more about the steps you really need to take to be able to sleep at night and have that feeling of personal freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. And something about what you said about the like-mindedness, knowing that you can go home to this new and wonderful place and be able to settle in and immerse yourself with people that think like you and have the same kind of values is important, I think, for a lot of people when making that decision and looking on where is the best fit for them. And that kind of leads us here into our next poll question. So what about planting your flag in a new place? What scares you the most? And these are just a few of the options I have there on the screen for you. What scares you? What's holding you back from taking the next step? Again, if there's something else on your mind, go ahead and take a few seconds and drop it into the Q&A section. We'd love to address what those concerns are for you. Language. So are you comfortable learning or speaking another language? Are you scared that maybe the locations that you've been looking at might not be the best for you? What about the network of trusted people that we talked about? There's a ton of people that can say they've done it and they can help you, but will they really have your best interests at heart? Investing in a home, maybe you've not had a chance to visit or see this home, and taking that next step might be a little scary for you. Acclimating the rest of your family, or getting in and out of the country. So a lot of you are concerned about picking the perfect location. And we're going to talk a little bit about that here when we start getting into this step. So be thinking about what that means for you. Be thinking about what your ideal location is. And then next, it looks here like they are looking for trusted people. They are looking for a network of experts to help guide them through the process. So hopefully we can get you guys on the right path today. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Here are the 4 steps for today. Andrea, tell us about what the 4 steps are.
Thanks, Sally. So the 4 steps that we were mentioning, finally, we're going to the reality of the webinar. First, you have to secure your landing pad. Like you have to know where you're going to be, and like which, if you want to have a home, where do you want to do it? Which country is the best for you and what does that country have that can offer you, and where you can feel that it's good for you, your family. You know, it depends if you're going to move by yourself or you're going to move with your partner or with your whole family, if you want to retire. So all those things you have to consider and see, and we are here to tell you which country has what, so you can realize this is the country that is the best for me. Obtaining a second residency is very important, because when you go to a country and you want to establish there, you don't want to have to leave the country every 3 months. That is the tourist visa. You want to know that you can stay there, that you can work there, that you can make a life there. Shelter your hard-earned money. You want to secure your finances, right? To know where you have, if you need to have an offshore bank, or if you need to have an account in a local bank. All of that we are going to talk about today. And just keep going. We're going to be here for any questions you have, even after the webinar. So we are going to talk to you about anything we can guide you to make all the steps that you need for this.
I think
Perfect.
one thing
I'm not sure if it's on my end that we're having some internet connectivity issues, but here we go. So secure your Plan B landing pad. So this is the first step. You've got to find where it is you are most comfortable in setting up your home, your new home. Andrea and Patrick, can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Yeah, we can. I just wanted to make a comment on that, on the last slide there.
Yep.
As well. First of all, when we're creating this webinar, it's not easy to boil down all the options out there down to, 3 or 4 steps. So what we decided to do, because people might be looking at this and thinking, well, that's not the Plan B I kind of had in mind. I thought I could do this or that. There's a million different ways, and we're happy to talk to you about them and answer your questions. We've been through this, and we often think amongst ourselves here that sure would be nice to have some people that have gone through this before. When I was first coming down to Nicaragua, for instance, 15, 20 years ago, there was nobody doing that. So I was really kind of floating out there in the wind trying to figure this stuff out. But like I said, there's a lot of different ways to shape a Plan B that allows you to sleep at night and feel more secure with your future and your freedoms. What we've done here with these steps are, like for instance, when we say secure your landing pad, we're really telling you that one of the easiest ways to get a residency, and I'll back up again, that, there's lots of citizen by investment plans out there for different countries. If you're financially, in really good shape and just want to buy a citizenship somewhere, you can do that. And we can help you, point you in the right direction of the countries that we believe are the best ones for that as well. But what we're doing is trying to find kind of the most economical yet secure and solid way to create your Plan B. And you may not use it right away. You might not say, well, I'm not going to move to Panama or Costa Rica or Belize or wherever, tomorrow. I might do it 10 years from now, or I might not do it at all, but I'd sure like to have that option. So there's other types of residencies that we'll talk about, renting residencies, pensioner residencies, but the one we're talking about is more of an investor residency, and that's the easiest one to get and the kind of the strongest of the options. And so just to clarify, this is one path right down the middle that we think is probably the best, easiest, most solid way to kind of guarantee yourself the freedom that you want to have, and that allows you to sleep at night. So.
Perfect. Thank you for the clarification. I lost you guys there for a minute, so I hope I wasn't talking over anybody, but all right, well, here we go. Let's go on to step number 1. And something I want to know, you mentioned, Patrick, there's different like rentista visas and residencies and things like that. And something you have to think about is, if cost of living is a concern to you when you are ready to make that move, do you have a home to go to, or are you going to have to be renting, which can really, eat into that budget, that monthly budget on your cost of living. But securing your Plan B landing pad. So what are you looking for? What is your dream location? I told you guys to be thinking about it. And now, are you looking for a tropical climate? Are you looking for a place where it's, spring and summer year round, where you don't have to worry about shoveling snow? Are you, is your biggest concern affordability? What kind of cost are you looking at in owning a home and maintaining a home and utilities and things like that? What about your quality of life? One of the big reasons that I left the United States in the first place, along with my husband, is we were living the rat race. And our quality of life wasn't what it could be. And upon our first visit to Belize, we realized that we were just running ourselves ragged, and we are really much more able to enjoy life where we are now. Lower cost of living, that's usually a really big concern for folks that are making the move. And the reality is that we all have to think of what our costs are going to be. A community of liberty seekers, we talked about this a little bit earlier. Do you want to be around people that are like you and think like you and have experienced the same types of things that you have? And maybe your reasons for relocating to this new place are very similar to each other. And location is important. And if I told you that you didn't have to choose just one of those things, would you believe me? So we are going to let you know some places that may tick all of those boxes for you.
And maybe not just one location either. That's the right. So that's an important thing. I mean, we're talking here a little bit about the different. I mean, full transparency. These are communities that Eco Villages has designed in our portfolio. We have designed many communities in the Latin American region. These are just one example from each of 4 countries listed on there. But the reality is that each one of these steps is kind of the prerequisite to the next. And the first step being, if you want the option, like I said, you might want a plan B. That doesn't mean you're going to use it tomorrow or next year or 5 years from now, but you want to have that option. The best way through the path is have another place in another country, and that place helps you fulfill step 2, which we're going to talk about in a bit, which is the residency, and that helps you get to the step 3 to protect your assets and all those sorts of things. But here, I mean, we have highlighted a few of them. Freedom Village is in the Panamanian Highlands. We're working. Ellie's in the office in Panama City, not Panama City, Florida. And we're in another home in Panama City as well. We're not too far from Freedom Village, which is in Boquete area. That's a really nice option. If you like springtime all the time kind of climate, that's what people are really attracted to that area. The Reef in Honduras is one of the more pretty places that I've ever been to, with the Caribbean waters and beach and the mountains right behind it. Very kind of unusual geography, but super attractive, right by Roatan, which is kind of one of the top diving areas in the world. Playa Pacifica in Nicaragua, is right on the Pacific beach, a spectacular spot with a new Spanish ranch type of style home designs that are beautiful, and literally right beside one of the emptiest, nicest beaches you'll find in the world. And Aruna is a canal-based home community in Belize on West Ambergris, part of Ambergris Key, which is an island in the Caribbean. And it doesn't get much better than Caribbean island living. So that's a really nice place as well. And you can kind of boat your little boat right up to your dock or to your doorstep, basically. And so these are just quite different, each one of these communities, but they're alluring to different things and different people. So, but the point of this slide is just to say there's a lot of options for people, looking around this region.
Right. And to hit on that just a little bit is that we know that we won't fulfill everybody's dream home, but we do have people in these places, in these countries that we've worked with before, and we can pass our trust on to you to work with them to find your dream location and your dream home, if it's not something that we have. And Patrick, talk to me about why specifically some of these places. I mean, location wise, why the Reef? Why Honduras? Like you said, La Ceiba, located in La Ceiba. Why would you choose a place like that to own a home? And maybe if you're not going to live in it full time, I mean, what do I do with it at that point?
Well, yeah, certainly. I mean, another big part of this, Plan B idea, especially if it's not something, like I said, that you're going to trigger tomorrow and move. All these locations are really good at rental revenue generators as well. So as a diversification investment, the Reef is a perfect example. You'd be surprised, but the Reef in Honduras is probably one of the highest rental returns of all the options that I know of. And that's partly because the cost to purchase a tiny home is under $100,000, but the rental rates in the region, because the area is underserved by accommodations, and it's so close to the Reef there for diving, that it has really good rentals, really good occupancy rates. And so obviously if you can find a home that's low in cost but high in rental revenue, that's a great combination. So people are using that. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but Honduras has a $50,000 buy-in for residency, which is great because, if you buy a $90,000 home that's above that bar, you now have you satisfied the need to get the $50,000 investment in the country to get residency. And not only that, but you have a bit of a cash cow generating revenue for you when you're not using it yourself. So and that's the case for Playa Pacifica is similar, and Aruna is similar, and Freedom Village. They're all destination areas, so generally underserved with accommodations. So that's always good for rental revenues.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so you know, like you mentioned, there's 4 countries here on the screen, but we do have some other communities that are coming online. The next one up here is Gran Zonte in El Salvador. Again, each country has different requirements that have to be met in order to secure that residency, which we're going to talk about. So that's why we're showing you there's different options, there are different home options, there are different landing pad options for you out there, and really finding what ticks your boxes, what fulfills your goals, your needs is really important. So narrowing in on those is something that you should really work towards. But yeah.
And each one of these countries has its own unique thing. Again, creating this webinar, we're trying to boil it down to the smallest number of steps in the most unique kind of way. But again, feel free to ask us questions like El Salvador. For people, I'm sure of all the hundreds of people on here, a lot of them are probably crypto fanatics or Bitcoin people, and whatever. We're excited because the property that we're designing in El Salvador, as most crypto people know, every crypto people know, that El Salvador is the first country in the world that adopted Bitcoin as a legal tender for its currency for its country. That's cool because we're doing a lot of things based around that. I could go on and on and on about the property and community in El Salvador, but it's a very beautiful area. And El Salvador is one of the only countries that allows you to invest with Bitcoin and also get residency with that. So
yeah, absolutely.
We'll talk more about that community in the next webinars, but that is a pretty cool one.
Yes, and that is on Thursday. So if you guys are interested, just let us know. We'll be happy to send over that link to you to get signed up for that. But let's move on into this investment curve, because you did touch on it a little bit a couple of slides ago, Patrick, about, what is your goal with your landing pad? Are you going to live in this home full time? Are you bringing a family? Are you looking maybe to live part-time? Maybe you're going to come and go. Maybe it's purely an investment and you just want to have it in your back pocket in case you feel the need to get away. So talk to us a little bit about why the countries vary so much on this curve.
Sounds good. Again, the housing piece that we're focusing on now is not the only way that you can get residency. It's one of the best ways to get residency. And so that's why we're talking about it over a number of slides. And basically, each country has a little bit different bar. I mentioned Honduras at $50,000. Nicaragua has $30,000 roughly right now. And some Belize $250,000. So it's all over the map, and that's part of the decision making. But again, the reason we're kind of belaboring this point on the investment component of it is because that is really the best way to get into the countries with a residency. It's your path to residency. And the reason why the investment path is best is, let's face it, these countries are looking for, an economic boost for themselves, right? And so if you're coming in as just renting an apartment every month and paying a little bit in rent and maybe eating a few groceries, that's not really boosting the country all that much. Likewise, if you go in under the pensioner visa, these renter and pensioner visas are usually shorter in terms of number of years that they're good for. And also that, again, the countries aren't aware that you're spending less money. As an investor, for instance, buying yourself a Plan B home, that they're much more inclined to make sure that goes through and quickly, because that's the kind of people they really want to move. So this slide really is a combination of the cost, sort of, plus the maturity of the market. So if you look in the top right where you have the Pacific coast of Costa Rica or Panama or Mexico, those countries started doing, marketing about themselves, especially to tourists, 40 years ago, whatever, 50 years ago, and they're more mature markets. The prices are higher, you're gonna have to spend, more capital to get a home there, or a vacation home or rental home, whatever it is for you. But at the same time, they're more mature tourist market. They have more tourism coming to it. So you generally, and not always, but you generally can generate more rental income as total. But on the bottom left is kind of the opposite end of that spectrum. These are relatively new players to the tourism market. They're beautiful countries, safe, and you'd be surprised. People think, oh, they're not safe. We can talk about that too, but they are. I've lived in Nicaragua for a long time. We just bought a place in Honduras, and these countries are, like I said, less mature on the tourism side. They didn't start marketing themselves as tourist destinations 40 or 50 years ago. They're pretty new to it. And so that means you have if you buy a place in one of these countries, you stand to the likelihood of making a much bigger capital gain is higher, because they have a lot more room to grow before they're in a mature market. And I've experienced it. I bought Nicaraguan property 15 years ago and had a really good capital gain on that. At the same time, you can make the argument that you won't make as much on the rental revenue, but it's a scale, right? It's how much did you spend versus what are you getting back from it, and that's your ROI. Like what is that ratio? Where at the same time, like I said, we're talking about the Reef or Playa Pacifica, some of those communities, they're theoretically lower on the country scale here in terms of having renters, but they generate a really good healthy rental return because there's more people going all the time, and because there's a bit of a lag in the accommodations, so they've been underserved for shortage. The government has all sorts of reports on the hotel shortage, like we need 7,000 more beds in this region type of reports, but that's always good for the buyer who's looking to get the capital gain and a good return on investment. I hope I explained that reasonably well. It's all over the map.
Yeah, you did. And like you said, this is kind of a package, each step builds on the previous one. So hopefully as we keep working our way through this, it'll all kind of come together for you. So we've mentioned it a couple of times already, but obtaining that second residency. So again, you put your best foot forward when you make the commitment to the country. You're going to invest a certain dollar amount into the country. And then you have a home. You have a home to go to. You have an investment property if that's what you're looking for. But then you have this second residency. And I remember the day that I finally got my red seal inside my passport as a permanent resident of Belize was just the most incredible feeling, because I ended up needing to use that residency during COVID, at the very beginning of COVID, when the borders closed. I was a resident of Belize. I had nothing left for me back in the States. I had sold everything. I had no house. I had no cars. And nobody really knew what was going to happen with COVID. And so being a resident of Belize and having that place to go to call home, I was able to repatriate back to my home country of Belize. And so it gave me an option. And that's really what I think a lot of you are on the line here for today, is to get a better understanding of what your options are. And so getting that second residency is definitely a very, very valuable and important step to take in this process. So,
and we could even talk about second, third, fourth residencies, and like we talked about earlier with citizenship. The residencies often lead to citizenship. It's generally the least expensive way to get a new citizenship as well. And just so people understand, there's a difference between citizenship and residency. I'm sure many of you are aware of that, but not everybody understands that. Your citizenship kind of is tied with your passport. I'm still a Canadian citizen, although I'm working on changing that too. But the residency allows you to live in these other countries and other things, work and those sorts of things, depending on which type of residency you have.
It's like a green card.
Yeah, it's like the green card in the US, right? And it allows you to live there and be part of the community there. So basically, I like to have, I currently have a Nicaraguan and Panamanian residency. And I like that because, everybody's seen what's going on in Canada, has gone on in Canada over the last few weeks, and I was maybe 15 years early in leaving, but I'm glad that I kind of am able to say that I have my residencies now and bank accounts and everything down here, because I mean, I was just talking to a Canadian friend who called me the other day and said, you know, I was one of those guys that donated to the rally, and they've frozen my bank account. In fact, I can't even insure my car anymore. They've frozen that too. And I was just like, this is not the Canada I remember, but you know, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. There's lots of reasons of why you want, you know, for whether it's, you know, to minimize taxes or just the climate or whatever it is for your reason to have a plan B. I think there's dozens of reasons to do it, but you know, to me, the more residencies I have, the more comfortable I feel, because I can just go, oh, you know what, if I don't like what Panama's doing this week, I'm just going to go to Nicaragua and stay there as long as I want, right? So we're kind of building our residency portfolio, and you know, the next step obviously for that is citizenship as well. What this webinar is more about, here's the first steps you really need to take, right? You can always go beyond where we are, but this is the first step.
Yeah, absolutely. So don't go in blind. And what we mean by that is, you know, you can, and I did it too, I'm guilty. You sit online and you do hours and hours and hours of web searches and things like that, trying to find the most up-to-date information. Because I think I know I've experienced it coming across the different residencies and the scales and the requirements, and they change. So having somebody in your corner that's advocating for you, such as a residency attorney or a lawyer or somebody that can say, this is the law today, and I'm going to, you know, keep pushing your paperwork through, and we're gonna keep taking steps forward together. That's really important. And I, you know, thinking everything was on the internet, you know, I can do this myself. And the frustration and the stress that first experience of getting a work permit caused me made me realize, you know, these people are the experts, and I'm talking about the attorneys and things in country that do this for people day in and day out. You want to find those people, and you want to find the people that have done it and are confident, and not only in their abilities, but their clients are also confident in their abilities. So on the screen there, you can see what the investment minimums are for each of the countries. Obviously, Nicaragua is the lowest price point of entry level there, and then it builds up from there, depending on, you know, Belize or Panama. And I'll note that in Panama, the reason why there's kind of a slash there is because if you are familiar with Panama, they do have a friendly nations visa, which is a list of 50 countries that allow you to invest in the country at that lower price point. But you are able to, as somebody outside of those 50 countries, to invest just at a little bit higher of a mark, and diversify a little bit between real estate holdings and just a cash investment, basically into a bank account here in the country. But Patrick, I'll let you build on that a little bit as you think it needs to be. But you know, really what this point is that in each of these countries that we have done business in, we have these connections, we have the attorneys, and we've taken the steps to finding these people, working with them, and building out packages to meet each individual scenario's needs. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point. Like eco villages we've been talking about, we design communities for developers and landowners. That's what we do. We're not lawyers, we're not tax attorneys, we're not all those other things that, you know, we're not, you know, specialists in all those things, but we have having gone through it, and all our staff having gone through it. Most of us are digital nomads living all over the place and working wherever we find ourselves. We've gone through all these processes so many times, and we made the connections with so many different groups in all the different countries down here that, you know, that was a big part of why we wanted to do these webinar series, is that, look, we've been through this. We know it's daunting to go into it if you haven't been. Now for us, it's kind of old hat. We just know, you know, well, I'm just going to call so-and-so and then they'll get me the residency. I'll do this. They'll help me with an offshore bank account, whatever the different thing is. And of course, because we do it all the time and help so many people relocate to this area, you know, we get really good rates from these different lawyers and, you know, the different people that are involved. So we do recommend, you know, absolutely. At the end of the show here, I guess we've got you know, an email address or whatever that you can contact us at. and really recommend that you do, because we can just put you on to somebody else that has packages that they've created, and we've kind of helped them create the packages for the different types of things. You know, you might be a couple with 2 kids or something, and that's, you know, a little different package, or maybe you don't want the bank account, you want something else, whatever, and you can kind of customize it. But just having the connections is the important part, and we've got that, so we want to help you guys out.
And something else I want to note there is at the beginning when we talked about the poll, we had the poll question, and one of the fears or one of the anxiety points was the legal documents. And so with having these people in place that do speak English and the you know, language native to the country that we're in, which is typically Spanish, the documents, depending on where you are, will be in that native language, Spanish usually, but they're able to communicate with that. They're able to communicate that paperwork with you in a language that you can understand as well. So that's really something that's really important to know, because not all residency lawyers and attorneys out there are able to provide that. Let's see, there we go. So maybe real estate is not on your radar. Maybe you don't want a home, or you don't want real estate ownership. There is some other options out there for you. And Patrick, you can tell us a little bit about what agroforestry kinds of investments would help us in this residency or Plan B process.
Yeah, I mean, technically, I guess this is a little bit of a misnomer. It's still real estate. I mean, it's still property. Right?
Well,
You're part of an agroforestry farm, but there are different ways to meet that bar that we talked about. You know, I was saying $30,000. So in the case of Vita Verde Agroforestry, which is a partner company that we work with, you know, they have a parcel of land that has teak and avocado on it. So you're an active farmer at that point, although they take care of it for you. But it's you know, they have one for $36,000, for instance. So that, you know, if you don't want to spend $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000 on a home, you can still look at getting residency. I mean, we recommend you be a little bit over the $30,000 limit. You know, we're talking about Nicaragua in this case. You know, if it's $30,001, that might be a little bit questionable for the government. But it's, you know, $36,000. You have a bit of a buffer in there, and that you know, that gets you still through the path to residency. So it is an option. That, again, if you're interested in that option, please let us know, and we can send you off into their website. But at the same time, I know they also do NFT. You can buy a share of the farm basically as an NFT, and for the crypto people on the call here, I think that's kind of an exciting thing as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So if you are interested in something like this, and Patrick, you mentioned an email address, and I should have just told everybody at that point, but questions@ecovillages.life will get you directly in touch with us, and we'll get to your email as soon as we can after the presentation. So we've gone through 2 steps. We're halfway there. Step 3 is to secure your hard-earned money. This is a big concern with people, and something we get asked about a lot is, how do I find a place to shelter my money and have it available to me? And Patrick, you did mention this a little bit earlier about what's going on in Canada, and something we've seen and talked to people about with firsthand. So how do we secure our hard-earned money? Tell us a little bit about banking in this region, at least.
Yeah, and one of the reasons this has really come to the excuse me, to the forefront lately is obviously with, you know, being Canadian, knowing a lot of Canadians and a lot of them talking about what's going on there. You know, anytime there's what I consider government overreach, I mean, to enact a war act, freeze bank accounts, and arrest people without due process is a little bit shocking to me, to be honest. But it certainly incentivizes people to look for options. And so what we just want to clarify on this was, you know, there really are 2 types of banks at a high level, right? And one is what we're calling the local banks. Sort of your operational, your transactional bank account, like, you know, maybe like Citibank in the US or TD in Canada, or, you know, whatever other banks in Australia, Europe, wherever you're from. Those are your kind of your daily, pay your utilities, have your bank card withdrawals and all that sort of thing. That's handy to have, certainly. But we don't recommend, you know, storing a lot of money in a bank account like that. I mean, you kind of want to keep that balance within the realm of, what your monthly expenditures are, and then kind of topping up as you go. When you get into the offshore banking, that's more of a shelter kind of play, a harbor, an asset protection, term is usually often used, where if you feel like, nervous about the, government or, stepping in and potentially freezing your bank accounts or whatever, is happening in your particular country with inflation and all those sorts of things. This is a wise play to have as well. And we have a lot of connections in this area as well. And that is really, they're not really transactional banks. They're not meant for, some of them will have, debit cards and all those sorts of things, but for the most part, it's more of a, way to protect your funds. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, you don't have to be a millionaire to use an offshore bank. It doesn't have to be that amount of money. It's just, you want to protect your nest egg and get it into a jurisdiction that can't reach in and take it or freeze it or whatever you're worried about. So there's really those two types of bank accounts that we recommend. You may want to just use the offshore one in the short term or just the transactional kind of account, but in the end, it works well to have kind of both in play. And really that kind of makes up the nutshell of what we were talking about in terms of the steps, right? You find a place that your landing pad, your plan B place. If everything hits the fan, where am I going? I'm going to that place that I bought last year. It's inexpensive and it's making money, rentals, when I'm getting rid of my renters and I'm going to live in there. That's sort of your step one. Your step two is the residency. You want to be able to go to that place as a resident, because otherwise you're potentially not, as a tourist, you have to renew your tourism visa all the time. You have to, leave the country and that, and as a resident, you don't have to. And then, to protect what you've earned, the offshore banks and the local bank accounts are what you really want to use for protecting that. So that really, I know it sounds kind of particularly put together and simple, but that really is what we sat down and thought, okay, like if you really, people are worried today, right? Things are happening quickly in the world. And I don't want to date the webinar, but with what's going on in the Ukraine right now, and like I mentioned about what was going on in Canada, and that kind of stuff is all over the world right now. And people are concerned and they're worried. And so we just wanted to put together kind of what's the simple solution to this. I can wake up tomorrow morning, start working on this, and in a few weeks, I can be comfortable that if crap hits the fan, I've got a place to go to, I've got accounts offshore, and I've got a residency for, where I'm going. So I think that's kind of, the best picture to put together in the simplest way to do it.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's just boiling it down. It can be quite overwhelming when you start, doing your own research about what the best way to do something is. But these are probably the three most targeted steps to take, which builds this funnel of where you've started versus where you will end up at the end. So step number 4, Andrea, tell us what step number 4 is.
Keep going. So for us, it's mostly
the survey, I guess.
It's mostly the survey, because we want to know what's your particular case, what you really want to accomplish, why you want to go and invest in another country, because everybody has their own reason, right? I know my reason, Patrick knows his, Ali the same, the different concerns that you have. So with the survey, we are going to be able to understand what you are looking for and to help you find exactly what you need. Because we've been here, we've been through all these countries, we've done the work, we've had the experience, we've
made the mistakes.
Yeah,
plenty of those.
We don't want you to like lose time, because we have made those mistakes and lost time, and it is going to make it easier for you, because we are going to guide you directly to where you want to go. So that is mostly what we want to accomplish with you and help you, because we understand in a way what you're going through, because we've been there, right? And we feel, as you were saying, to go to another country, like have your eggs in different nests, right? That's how you say it. It makes you feel more safe, you know, to feel that, okay, things are going bad here, but we have a home in Honduras. We moved there, right? So that is something that has made us really, as you said before, be able to sleep better at night.
Well, and the other thing too is, like, you know, we're being perfectly transparent with this. Eco Villages designs communities. That's what we do. And we would love for you to choose an Eco Village community to be our neighbor in, and that would be awesome. But we also know everybody's got different tastes, and whatever you find is what you find. And you know, we don't own those communities, or the resorts and neighborhoods and things like that. We just design them. But yeah, we're proud of them, and we'd like people to choose ours. So there's no doubt about that. But you know, at the same time, you know, we want to, in the survey, we can get more specific about, I'm a couple with 3 kids, or I'm a single woman, and I'm going, you know, these are my concerns, or whatever. We can help guide you through that. And, you know, we'll just be transparent. It's like, this is an area that you might want to consider, because it sort of suits what people that are like-minded like you that are doing.
Yeah, and vice versa. If we know that none of our communities or our experiences fit your needs, then we're welcome, or we're open and inviting to the fact that we can put you in touch with people that can. People can provide you with those places to make sure that you're happy with your decision. And by guiding you through this survey, it goes through a lot of the details. Like you mentioned, are you bringing kids? Because that's going to play a factor into your residency package and the cost associated with that package. So I know it may be seeming like this presentation was very general, but the idea is, now we've framed your thinking around what you need to do. So now let's find that place for you and put together this great journey and help you along the way. So you made it. We have made it to the end of the presentation here with 9 minutes left to go. Patrick, you did a great recap a few slides ago, so we don't have to go back into this. But I will say that something that came to mind, and just another firsthand experience, was that when we were doing the permanent residency in Belize, there were a few people who mentioned to me more than once that they would have just gone the investor route, because it ended up taking them 10 years to actually get their residency in Belize, even though, because they were doing like time and country. So if you have to leave the country and you don't meet those requirements, your time starts all over. So 10 years is a long time to be waiting in limbo there for your residency. But I just wanted to hit that little high note there, that it truly is the I guess you could say, the fast lane to securing that second residency.
Yeah, the fast and the easy one. I mean, it sounds self-serving, because we design communities and we tell people to go buy a home. I get that. I can see what it looks like, but at the same time, it really is and I'm stubborn, and I tried to do all these things by myself the first time in countries, and I was also taking years to get it done. And ultimately, I just gave up and said, okay, I'm gonna hire a residency lawyer. I'm gonna hire somebody that is an expert in finding offshore bank accounts and that sort of thing. And it's not very expensive down here, so that it's certainly worth doing so. And again, that's not our business, but we're 2 decades in being down here and doing things. It's we have the connections with all sorts of different people, and really just I want my new neighbors and friends, the expats that end up living around me, to be happy with their experience. It's no fun if it took years and they're miserable about it. So
we want to have happy people.
Yeah, it's much more fun to live around happy people.
I think generally the minute you step off a plane into this region, at least I know I do, is just like a huge weight lifts off my shoulders. So we do have some questions here, you guys. Everybody else on the line, if you have some questions, now is the time to drop those into the Q&A section. We are going to answer as many of them as we can and get you well on your way here. But in the meantime, if you have something that you don't want to share with us, or maybe it's very, very specific to your situation, remember to reach out to us at questions@ecovillages.life, and we will get them answered for you then. All right. Somebody, anonymous attendee, welcome. Anonymous, thanks for joining us today. Tell me about potential land grabbing by the government.
Well, I mean, that one's fairly easy. Let's just face it. That's kind of old news. I mean, I could go into the details of, countries like Nicaragua that back in the 80s, people had experienced that, but that really just doesn't happen anymore. These countries are all very aware of where their bread and butter comes from, and that's from, foreigners that are investing in the country, buying land.
They want investors.
Yeah, I mean, imagine the bad press if the government ever came in and said, "Oh, I'm going to confiscate your land." It's just not. In Nicaragua, tourism surpassed agriculture as in the GDP a couple of years ago, and maybe not last couple of years over COVID, but at one point it did in 2017, I think. And so they realized the value of the investment by people, and they're never going to take the property away. So yes, that was. I mean, there's actually a backstory, just things that happened in the past 40, 50 years ago like that too, but that's not a current thing in these countries.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, because Ryan has a great question here. He says, what is the current political climate in Nicaragua, and how do you foresee it developing going forward?
Well, if you're a libertarian, freedom-loving person like me, then you're really excited about Nicaragua, because Nicaragua is probably the freest country in the world when it came to COVID. They came right out of the gate, and I'll paraphrase, what the president said. Basically is that, you're not children, we're not your parents. You decide how you want to protect your family. We're not going to mandate masks. We're not going to mandate vaccines. We're not going to do any of that stuff. We're not going to shut down the economy or shut down businesses. Each business, each individual can make their own decision. That was probably the greatest thing that Nicaragua ever did in its history, and it's made it extremely popular. We've seen an exodus from other countries into Nicaragua like I've never seen before in 20 years. So there is so much action happening in a country like that, mostly because of that decision. And so it's kind of funny that, you look on a US State Department website or something, and it'll say, Nicaragua, beware, it's, whatever, it's run by a dictatorship and blah, 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 socialist. It's like, well, that socialist country was the freest country in the world the last couple of years. So, I mean, I get a little bit passionate, annoyed when people criticize some of these countries down here, because most of the time it's from people that have never been here. So, pick who you listen to on these things too. And, I have lots of friends that are from US, Canada, Europe, Australia that have been in Nicaragua, for instance, since we're talking about that one, over the last 20 years, and loving life, having a great lifestyle. And it's so low cost of living. Their lifestyle is way higher than where they came from. And, it's just, you really need to experience it. So I think the best thing for people is often to just go visit.
And I can see that there's very small people in the world that have discovered Nicaragua. Like you guys, that you are here right now. Not many people know about it, because in the mainstream media it still looks bad, right? It's the tyrannical, supposedly government. And it's surprising that it was as you were mentioning, it was the country that was the freer, like let people be and do whatever they want. And the countries that were supposed to be the freest were the ones who were like shutting people down. So
yeah, we have so many examples of it. It totally flies in the face of what mainstream media says. You got Nicaragua being extremely free on the COVID side, El Salvador bringing in a decentralized currency that they can't control. They don't have a central bank that can say, oh, you know what, Bitcoin, we're going to print some Bitcoin today. They can't do that. That is one of the most free economies in the world right now because of that. So, this area is leading the world in freedom right now, which is kind of weird, because in the history of, the perception history is not good. Right? So, and for that reason, if you watch some of our other webinars, I'll always say, I mean, I kind of pick Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua as where to invest, because it's got the most possible capital gain, because we're seeing such an influx of people into the country that it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had some questions that came in previous to the webinar, and one of those mentioned being a solo or single woman that would be traveling and doing this journey by herself. What would you say to that person, Andrea?
Yeah, like I understand, because I had the same fear, even though even coming from Ecuador, from Latin America, I'm always paranoid about security, worried about be by myself. I lived alone in Ecuador, and like my parents were like a little worried. But when I moved to Nicaragua, I had that fear, right? That if I would go to different places by myself, I don't know if something is going to happen. Even being Latin American, I had that fear, thinking because I didn't know much about the country. When I got there, I would go anywhere by myself, no problems. I felt even safer than in my own country because I was living in a big city. Bigger cities in any part of the world are always unsafe. But in Nicaragua, you can go from one place to the other. We've been through the whole country, never fearing anything that would happen. I hear a lot about it. Are you afraid of being kidnapped or things like that? Never heard of something like that happening there. So once you get here, you understand the feeling. Like if you have a problem in the middle of the street, people come and want to help you. That's what usually happens here in Central America.
I was going to just say, like, my kids used to, learn to drive and things like that in Nicaragua, and they would drive around. If they've got a flat tire or whatever, the whole village would come out and fix the tire for them. And it's just I like the culture, right? It's family oriented and it's very protective of people. So I think it much. I mean, as Canadians, we always everybody says you're so friendly and everything. Well, I think the Central American, Latin American countries are actually friendlier and certainly more helpful. Like, I had a flat tire around the corner once, and the police stopped and fixed my tire for me because they said, well, this is a bit of a blind corner. You don't want to stay here too long. And I've never had a Canadian cop stop and fix a tire on my car.
And if they know that you're from another country, even more, like they want to help you more because they feel, oh, maybe you're lost, you need our help. And if you don't speak their language, they help you even more because they want to try to understand
because they feel sorry for you.
Maybe. But yes, it's like it's great to see that you go everywhere and they're smiling at you even if they don't know you. That's something that I really liked when I came here, and that's why I feel like a home as well.
Absolutely. All right. Very thorough answer on safety there, you guys. Kelly, it looks like this was from the poll, but Kelly, you were saying that one of your concerns was picking a good location and then getting in and out of the country. And I think those are two really valid concerns that you have. And so I would really encourage you to take a look at that survey and really narrow in on why is that your biggest concern about picking the location? Is it because of the language? Is it because of, what you've heard about safety? So really narrow in on that. One of the things about Belize is an English speaking country. It's the official language. So if language is really something that you just can't get past, Belize might be a really good option for you as far as the language barrier is concerned, and that all of the paperwork and things like that is also in English, so easier to understand.
One other comment there, Ellie. One of the reasons that we've chosen Panama City, not only is it we really like Panama, but as one of our homes, because we're having to travel a lot for work and working on communities in all these different countries. Panama City is a hub. El Salvador has the main other hub in Central America. So, if you're in the Bitcoin Beach area in Salvador, you have flights to almost everywhere. Likewise with Panama City. I mean, we can go to Madrid, Spain, or, all over the place. So, and obviously very good connections from the US and Canada to this area.
Yeah, that was the other half of the question. So thanks for tailing that up there.
I can't see the screen from here. So
okay. Heidi is asking, do you need to have a PR, permanent residency, to open a bank account? I can answer specifically for a few countries, but the one I'll talk about is Belize specifically. So a local bank account in Belize, you cannot open a local bank account without a residency. So there are steps. Remember, we talked about steps that build upon steps. So there is a method to our madness here, but there are other countries, and Patrick and Andrea, I'll let you address those, but there are other countries that will allow you to open a local bank account without having a residency, but definitely having the residency makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, and we don't need to belabor this one because it's specific to everybody and every country and everybody that specific lifestyle. So The only thing I would say is that an offshore bank, you don't have to be a resident. Obviously, that's one of the reasons they're built like that. So it depends on the type of bank account and also which country you're in. So if you can do the survey, and we're happy to answer more specifically on that one.
Perfect. Another anonymous attendee, how do you handle world-class health insurance over there? I'm concerned about that.
Pass this over to the doctor. I don't know if you mentioned earlier, Andrea is a pediatrician. So I don't know if you said that.
Yeah, so for me, health insurance is very important. So that's why we have health insurance. That's an important question because you're worried always where are the good hospitals, if we're going to find good attention in these countries. And yes, you're going to get really good hospitals, very well equipped, really good specialists. But of course, there are some equipments that maybe you won't find here. So that's why we have an international one. You can reach out to us so we can contact you to the person that can show you about the different options of health insurance. But the important thing that you have to know is that you can get health insurance so you can be taken care in the country that you are in, or go to other countries. You would have like part of the health insurance includes an air ambulance, so it depends on the health insurance that you pick. But we have information about that, and you are going to be able to get one here.
I'm going to add something because I just can't help myself, but always adding something. But
Story?
No story, just that it really depends on your lifestyle again, right? I mean, we have to travel a lot, so we felt like international healthcare was the way to go for us. But if you're going to be in the country, for instance, if you're in Panama or in El Salvador or whatever, they have, every country has some very good hospitals, and if you can get specific health insurance just for that hospital, and they're often very inexpensive, like $40-$60 a month, something like that.
Yeah, like it mostly depends on your needs, right? If you're a person that has to go to the hospital, has to go to a doctor frequently because you have a chronic disease, then maybe get a health insurance in the country, so your every time that you go to a hospital or to the doctor, or you need to buy any medicine, is not expensive for you, right? But even if you don't travel so much, it is good to have sometimes local and also international. Like in my country, I did have local because if I had any problems, like I'm like that, if you have any problems, that you can go to the hospital in the country, and they practically, you don't have to pay anything, right? They covered 100%. But I had the international just in case I had like a chronic disease or a big accident that I thought that maybe in Ecuador they weren't able to treat it, so I can go to another country. Sometimes some different to specialized drugs that you needed to go to the United States or to Europe or whatever. So it all depends on you can see the different options that you can have, so you can also be very calm, and you can have in any of these countries, you can have any of those.
Right.
I know we're in the question and answer thing, so we can go on all night, right? We're allowed. But
It's a conversation.
Here's a good example of the dichotomy. Andrea and I have very different feelings on this. I never had health insurance at all for a long time because one of my first. Well, that's just built in. But I mean,
that's a health insurance.
Yeah, but in Nicaragua, I didn't have any, for instance, and the reason for that is because I had kidney stones in Nicaragua, and I got a house call, and I went to the hospital, and I had, ultrasound and blood tests, and saw 2 different specialists, urologists, all sorts of stuff. Got the medication. It was under $60. So to me, it's like I'm not going to have that happen every day. So you can actually weigh it and say, well, you know what, the healthcare is good but very inexpensive. And you can choose whether you want to have insurance or not, or gamble like I did.
Yeah, and that's even a question in our poll is, do you need to be somewhere where there is a really good health care infrastructure? So that may be one of those decision makers in your process there. So Shannon asks, what are your recommendations for offshore banks or to talk to experts about?
I would recommend, contact us. We'll put you in touch with the right people. It depends on which country. For instance, if you're coming to Panama, we have connections with lawyers here that will help you open a local bank account and an offshore bank account. And that's different in the way you go about that in every country. And you might think, what do you mean? I need a lawyer to open a local bank account? Yeah, you sort of do. You can do it on your own, but if you don't want the headaches and the nightmares, just it's not like going to Citibank in Miami or something and just opening an account. It's more of a process, the local accounts, but the lawyer has the relationship with the bank, and they kind of represent you, and they just go in and say, okay, here's the KYC, they know your client information, and you'll get it done.
Yeah, it's a lot easier.
It's so much easier. It's honestly, I mean, normally I wouldn't recommend lawyers when you don't need them, and I'm telling you, this is a time where you should probably just bite the bullet and hire a lawyer. And we have, again, we have connections with people, the lawyers in the different countries that do all that, and they give us a good rate because we're passing a lot of people over to them. And so if you're interested in that, just make sure you send us an email, and we'll get back to you with the connections.
Yeah, and I'll mention too there, if there are mistakes that end up happening in your paperwork and things like that, then because you have this attorney, they will fix it instead of you trying to figure out who to talk to and where to go to fix that. So Olga, you asked, how do we call you? If you will just drop us an email, that's really the best way to get in touch with us, questions@ecovillages.life. You're welcome to send an email directly there. Let us know kind of what your availability is, and we'll definitely find some time to schedule either a WhatsApp call with you, a Zoom meeting, or whatever you're most comfortable with. Denise says that so many people are under the impression that these areas are full of criminals and are dangerous. My daughter just said that is where all the immigrants are from that are coming into the US. I'm not sure which country we might have been talking about there, Denise, but do you want to address that a little bit, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the reason people are coming from Honduras, Salvador, or whatever into the US is not to flee safety. That's mainstream media crap. It's because they've been led to believe there's tons of opportunities, and frankly, there are tons of job opportunities in the US. A lot of people aren't coming back from COVID. Their unemployment rates are a bit bizarre in North America right now. And people are thinking, well, and then, you have to understand, like, when the cost of living is so low here, the wages are also so low. So it might be 80 cents as, a minimum wage in one of these countries, 80 cents an hour. Whereas, it might be $12. Canada, I think it's $15 now.
Yeah, and they send that money to their families here. So it is a lot for them.
Yeah, so but they also don't realize, it's not advertised that, oh, by the way, when you go to the US, your cost of living is going to go up by 15 times as well, not just your wage. So it's a bit of a misnomer. And when it comes to the dangerous places, we talk. I'd really encourage you to watch some of the other webinars we've done, because we really focused on safety and the crime rates and things like that. You'd be surprised. Nicaragua is general as an example, and most of the other countries are similar. It is well, Panama, Costa Rica, other countries like that, very low crime rates. But again, it's the generalizations. And Ellie always laughs at me when I say this, but if you're a drug dealer and you're out at 2 a.m., there's probably chances that there can be crime around you. But if you're just an average person that's living your normal life, it's no different than living in Europe or the States or Canada in terms of, the possibility of something happening to you. So, you can't really paint a whole country with one brush either. If I said, oh, how safe are you at 1 a.m. in downtown Chicago? That would be different than your answer to saying, I'm out in a potato field in Idaho or something, and how safe is it, right? So, it's the same with these countries down here. If you're in a community of expats, or in a gated community, or anywhere, it doesn't have to be a gated community, just living on the beach in some small village somewhere, it's all very safe. If you're among the criminal element for taking in their stuff, then yeah, that's going to be a different story. So
just mostly just trust your instincts, right? It doesn't mean that, oh, because we're saying these places are safe, you're going to go to any community, right? There are places that are more dangerous than others. Just be smart about it, because yes, there are criminals here, like there are criminals in any part of the world. So it is mostly to use your instincts and talk to locals where are the safest areas to go and things like that. Not that we're painting everything to be perfect and wonderful.
No, it's not. It's really, safety wise, I don't feel any less safe here or more safe really than most other places in the world. It just depends on what you're doing, using your common sense.
Yeah.
Street smarts, I guess.
Absolutely. But we always encourage you to go and put your boots on the ground and go get a feeling for yourself, because you may feel more safe one place than you do another. So, Olga, you have some great questions. Are you on Roatan or on the mainland? I guess that's in reference to the Reef community there. It is on the mainland in a community, a city called La Ceiba, right outside of La Ceiba. And you also asked, will you handle my rentals in the diving community? Tell us a little bit about rentals and what that looks like in these countries. Well, I guess our communities a little more specifically, Patrick.
Yeah, well, the diving communities are really in two countries, in Belize and Honduras, right? And the one that was just mentioned by Olga is the Reef. You are looking out at Roatan from the mainland. So you're looking out at the Bay Islands, Utila on your left, and Roatan kind of in the middle. Beautiful islands. It's a really nice ferry ride across, obviously the turquoise waters across to these islands. I personally like living on mainland. I've lived on enough islands now that I get a little island fever, so I like to be able to drive somewhere distance. So, but that's one of the reasons. Going in terms on the rental side of things, yes, all these communities have a rental management, property management organization as part of them. They will rent it for you. There's a rental management agreement. And so you really just sort of, if you're looking at that as an option, you just sort of need to pick which community suits your desires the most. And if it's somewhere you're never going to move yourself, then maybe you're just picking totally financially. If it's somewhere you think, well, I'd like to live there, then it's a bit financial and it's a bit, personal feelings, right? So.
Right, and kind of piggybacking off of that, Brad had a comment here. He said that he's really thankful for the information, so thank you. But wondering which country is the safest, and that seems to be a really strong theme throughout this presentation. He said that they loved Roatan, however, they heard that the mainland is not safe, and that's why he moved to Canada. And so I'll just say something about that. Brad, we had a webinar just last week on Honduras where we talked about some of the expat communities there. Obviously, if you're in an expat community where tourists are coming in and out, those places are pretty well protected. Everybody knows, from the locals to the police to just the community itself, that these people are here. They're here to have a good time. They don't want to paint the country that you're in a bad light. They want you to enjoy, because the fact is that they want you to come back. So anything you want to add there as far as La Ceiba specifically, Patrick? But Tegucigalpa and San Pedro Sula are known as high crime areas, just like Belize City in Belize is known as a high crime area. Chicago, Illinois is known as a high crime area because they're the bigger cities, the higher population of locals and things like that. So,
and the one thing I would suggest again is watch some of the other webinars.
Mhm.
And Ellie, you've made some bookmarks on some of them where it goes straight to the safety section, so that's good. It makes me laugh a little bit, his comment on about a local from Roatan saying La Ceiba wasn't safe. That's a little rivalry going on there. The people from Roatan are just consider themselves not part of Honduras, and they it goes both ways. It's like, well, somebody in La Ceiba would be, oh, you don't want to go to Roatan.
It's like Galapagos in Ecuador, right?
Yeah.
Like another country.
Yeah, I mean they like to have that little banter back and forth, but so I would take that with a grain of salt.
Well, and the reality too is we've invested personally in these locations, so we don't want to send you to a place where you're going to be unhappy. That wouldn't make good business sense for us, either. Exactly. So. Roy, great question. I'm starting to get tongue-tied here. Is there an investment retirement for residency in El Salvador?
Investment, well, those are sort of two different types, investment and retirement. One of the, we'll talk a little bit, yes, there are, but the investment one, they're actually changing it right now to be, it used to be 3 Bitcoin, because they switched to the Bitcoin currency, or they were talking about that. Now they're making it just a flat $100,000, and it can be in Bitcoin or dollars as the investment one. I'm not as familiar, to be honest, with the retirement visa in El Salvador, but like I said, most of the countries have multiple types of visas that you can get, residency visas. And we focus a lot on the investment one, just again, because the countries are, they're getting an awful lot of people come in right now to these countries from all over the world. But obviously, if you want to be kind of at the top of the list of getting it done quickly and efficiently and correctly, the investment one is the way to go, because that's the most helpful to the country, and they don't make any bones about it. They're looking for investment in their economy.
Absolutely. I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce Klein or Klein was asking, maybe it's just me, but it feels a little North American based. Are there options closer to Europe, like African countries, or those countries you mentioned, the best getaway locations globally?
Well, I mean, like I said up front, let's be honest. We're experts in Central and Latin, the Latin American region. Eco Villages is looking at a community of a tiny home and minimalist home community, eco-sensible home community in Senegal, in Africa. That's a pretty popular destination for Europeans going south. But yeah, I mean, I guess, because we have an awful lot of people coming from the US and Canada, Australia as well, to, into our region here, as well as Europe. We are focused right now in Central America, although we are expanding. So I can't really give you a lot of, hard facts and good advice on, where on the African continent, for example, to go. So yes, we understand our weakness. We're not global experts. We're experts in this region.
Yep, and I will say that if that's something that you really want to explore more, maybe in the European space or somewhere like that, let us know, drop us an email, and we can definitely work with our network and our different connections to get you in touch with somebody that would be a good fit for you to reach your goals. Heidi says that, have we experienced any harassment in terms of COVID being a white man's virus? Have we? I haven't seen anything about that at all. Just like every other parts of the world, we've been, regulations are relaxing. People are starting to get back to a more normal kind of life. So that's, I learned something from you today, Heidi. I hadn't even heard that was happening in the region.
Well, I mean, the one thing that's, I guess, along those lines I was going to mention is Nicaragua being the freest of the country with no restrictions or mandates or anything. The one thing they do is they require a COVID test to come into the country. And that was kind of to appease their own population, because their population was worried that you have no rules on this. And if it's real and it's a thing, we're going to get tourists to bombard us with the virus. So that was their kind of their compromise, I guess, with on one hand being super, unmandated and all that sort of thing, super open and free. They felt like they, and they were going into an election last fall, so they put that in place to, I think, kind of make the people happy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay, I was just kind of scrolling through the questions here. Oh, this is a great question. Anita was asking about having her bring her cat without having her jabbed. Do you know what document is needed, or how can I find out?
Which country are we talking about?
I'm not seeing a country specifically. The requirements are a little bit different for each country. So Anita, if you want to just send us a quick email and let us know about more specifically which country's on your radar. What kind of, you said you have a cat, how old is your cat, and kind of some more details about that, and we can definitely send you some more information specific to your inquiry. Here's a question. She said, going off of Kelly's question, so she was the one that mentioned, coming in and out of the country, picking a good location. Chrissy is asking, tagging on and saying with a small child, and we haven't really addressed children in this presentation. So we'll talk about it briefly here, but I really would highly recommend, Chrissy, that you visit our website, ecovillages.life, www.ecovillages.life, and go to our webinar gallery. And in there, you will see all of the previous webinars that we've done for each country thus far. And in each of those webinars, there is a section on schools. And we talk quite a bit about the expat communities and people that have brought their children to these countries of all different ages. So I would definitely highly recommend you watching some of those other webinars, and you know, if you want to just scroll to the section about schools, you're absolutely welcome to do so. Yep. Uchenna, did you get the email address? So questions@ecovillages.life, questions.ecovillages.life. And I apologize, we typically have that on our screen here, but this one was a little bit different. Good question here.
Note there that it's ecovillages.life, not .com. So
did I say .com? Oh, I thought
no,
I said
you didn't, but most people by default just always hit .com.
Oh, okay. I was like, I might have messed up.
It's questions in plural.
Yeah, questions with an S at the end is, or info, INFO @ecovillages.life is another one that we'll get to, and we'll see.
Perfect. Let's see. When can one stop paying taxes in Canada? That's a great question.
I guess I have no default answer on this one for sure. Well, this is an important thing. I mean, the Canadian tax system, and most of my understanding is, and I can't speak for all the countries, but most of Commonwealth countries, your taxes are tied, your personal income taxes are tied to your residency and not your citizenship. So in my case, I'm a resident of Panama, a resident of Nicaragua. I'm no longer a resident of Canada, but I am a citizen of Canada. So in my case, I don't have to pay any taxes in Canada whatsoever anymore, because I dropped my Canadian residency. And that takes 2 years. To be honest, if you say, okay, I'm moving out, but you have to move out of Canada and you have to get rid of everything, like no cars, not a bicycle, nothing. You got to get everything out, or they'll come and say, well, it still looks like you are kind of a resident here. So it's important, if it's, you know, if you're looking to shed the Canadian income taxes, it's good to get rid of that residency and have a residency somewhere else. But it does, you'll still have to go for 2 years. It may be 1 year now. They talked about changing it. I'm not, for me, when I did it, it was 2 years. But that's a real benefit to being Canadian, to be honest, because you know, Ellie, in your case, that your taxes follow your citizenship. So your passport, you'd have to get rid of your American passport if you want to get rid of paying taxes in the US. And that's a big distinction, because I mean, the Canadian passport, at least right now, I can travel all over the world with it, and I can still use that passport while I'm a resident of other countries. So it's a good question. We're not tax lawyers or tax experts, but I know from my own experience that was the case. Perfect.
Yeah, and that was a great question. Another good question here from Christian, and I know, guys, that we're already almost at the hour-and-a-half mark here. So I just want to note that we are recording this. It will be sent to you. So if you do need to jump off the line and go about the rest of your day, you're most welcome to do so. But just keep an eye out for that follow-up email to hit your inbox tomorrow. Christian asks, I don't have that much startup capital. Would it be possible to go there as a digital nomad?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, especially if you're looking at renting in these areas, you can, what a lot of people do and a lot of digital nomads do is they'll stay in one area maybe 3 months, and another area for another 3 months, and maybe break the year up into quarters. And usually in most of the countries you get a 90-day, well, many of the countries anyway, you get a 90-day tourist visa. So you could go to El Salvador for that period of time, then you could go to Costa Rica, and then you could go to Belize or whatever, and just be a digital nomad renting in different places. I mean, the other option is, if you are interested in buying, there are some financing options in many cases as well. So, what a lot of people do, this is, if you do have a little bit more capital or wanting to finance something, for instance, if you want to buy a home in Nicaragua on the Pacific beach, in Honduras on the Caribbean beach, and maybe Panama in the highlands, you could buy a tiny home in each location. If you had let's say you had a $300,000 house in the US, you sell that and you buy a $100,000 house in 3 different locations, and then you can kind of be the digital nomad between them while you're not at one of them or 2 of them at one time. You're renting them out. So people do that as well. There's a lot of different ways to skin the cat, I guess. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you mentioned, just being able to have that freedom and the flexibility of where you are maybe from throughout the years is quite exciting. Let's see, we have another good question here from Heidi. How do you get from Nicaragua to La Ceiba without paying a fortune? Patrick, you're also an expert in finding some great flight deals.
Sorry, I can't see from where to where?
From Nica to La Ceiba.
Well, I mean, normally there's I used to do that all the time. Managua has a connection through El Salvador. It's usually pretty quick. There used to be a direct from Roatan. So there's a bunch of different ways, and Pedro Sula is a usual connection route as well. The problem with during COVID, a lot of the airlines, postponed or canceled certain flights, and then they brought on other ones, and so it's a hard question to answer at any given time. I use
changes,
next week it could be different. So it's really kind of week to week that you really need to kind of do the search and find. But I mean, I guess the other way is you could drive. you can get a bus. There's very inexpensive ways to go too. So.
Sure. Yeah, and we're happy to talk a little bit more about what those routes are with you, Heidi, about more specifically your timeline and things like that. As you know, things are changing quite rapidly. So let's see, Brad has said that he's seen that in Costa Rica, you must be married with a certificate for both to benefit in residency. If you purchase a home, is that the same for Nicaragua or Honduras? My spouse and I are not legally married.
It depends on obviously how you purchase it. If you purchase a home, for instance, I take the example of Nicaragua.
They can both be primary applicants.
You can be both on the title, and then like a $30,000 limit in Nicaragua. If you buy a $100,000 home, you have the play for both of you. But yeah, to be honest, in the civil law communities down here, common law is not really recognized as much. So it's changing. Certainly, some of the countries are starting to recognize it more and more. But
they can legalize their union, not necessarily like marriage, but like a legal union too.
There's options, but again, probably could get into the weeds on that. So we're happy to answer in an email.
Yeah, happy to talk with you more, Brad, about that specifically. And again, your timeline really makes a difference as well. John says, what is the average monthly rent cost for one person? Wow, that's a loaded question. It can depend on so many different things. I mean, which location did you have in mind, John? They do vary a little bit from country to country. It depends on what kind of lifestyle you're looking to live. We had an apartment in Belize that was very, very affordable. And we were talking 1 bedroom, 1 bath, about $400 US a month. Here in Panama City, we're oceanfront in a penthouse. It's not really a penthouse, but we're in a high rise here in front of the ocean. And it's a little bit more expensive. It's about $1,500 a month. So it really does depend on what lifestyle you're looking to live, how close you want to live to certain amenities and conveniences, what finishes you're looking for. What is it that is going to make you happy in that home where when you're writing that monthly rent check, that you're still happy with it at the end of the day. Arthur has a great question here. Does buying real estate in your personal name versus an LLC make it harder or easier versus the other? So buying real estate in a personal name versus an LLC.
It depends on whether you're buying the real estate for residency or not. And which country. For instance, in Nicaragua, you have to create a company locally in the country to own that property, to use that property as your residency investment. And so Nicaragua has an SA, which is kind of the local version of LLC. But I mean, we could go into real depth on this again, but lots of people will own Nicaraguan property as a Belizean LLC and do different things for different reasons. So again, it's something that we could probably take offline, I guess, and answer for you.
Yep. I'm just walking through these just to make sure we didn't miss anything. Heidi says it's about $54 by bus to Managua to La Ceiba. So that's a really economical option there. Heidi, thanks for sharing that with us.
It
John,
goes to a really pretty part of the world too. I mean, the northern part of Nicaragua is kind of hilly and you know, really pretty with a lot of coffee country and things like that up there. So it's a nice trip too.
John, I left your question, and this will be the last one for today, guys. We're going to wrap it up here for you. But is food expensive in the countries? You all know how much I love talking about food.
That's why you left that one to the end.
I will
it's an inside joke, but on one of
we
have a bit of an inside joke, but on one of the webinars, Ellie's put $1,300 a month as her food budget. Sorry, I'll never roast you again. And I was trying to think of how on earth you could spend $1,300 down here. But I mean, Andrea and I always, you know, remember the, you know, first time we went to some of the markets in Nicaragua. I like shopping at the markets versus, you know, the big box stores type of thing. But we filled up you know, one of those burlap potato sacks that are, you know, come up to your waist with, I don't know, tomatoes and fruits and, you know, bananas, whatever, a mix of fruits and vegetables. And it was, I don't remember even the price anymore, but I know it was under $4 because I remember looking at each other. It's like, oh, wow, you know, so that probably fed us for a few weeks, right? So, you know, the bottom line is it depends on how you shop. If you want to buy North American cereal in a box and it's been imported, you know, it's going to be more expensive than it is in the US. If you want to buy fresh fruit at a market, you're going to pay way, way less. So it depends, you know, same with fish. Obviously, when you live near the ocean, the fish are very inexpensive. And, you know, chicken is a staple in Central America, so it's almost like free.
John is also asking if it is tasty. Yes, it is really tasty, the food. And also you can find any spices that you want here. Like Patrick loves Indian food, Thai food, and we sometimes like to cook that in the house, or you find any restaurant from different countries, you know, Italian, so Japanese. So you can have everything, right? The Latin American food, but also any food that you would like to.
Growing up in Canada, I don't think I even knew what fruit was supposed to taste like because, you know, they pick it weeks early, you know, paint it and then ship it up and it sits on the shelf. So it's never ripe, really. It's certainly not vine ripened. But down here, they just pick it when it's ready to eat. And it's so delicious and tasty that, you know, it's a totally different experience. I mean,
very natural.
Yeah. And they don't, you know, it's all, you know, whether you're like organic food or not, it's all basically organic because, you know, herbicides and pesticides are just too expensive for the farmers to use. So they don't, plus they get to pick it when it's ripe. They don't need to, you know, to protect it, you know, for, you know, like, you know, to last forever unripe. So yeah, it tastes much better. You'll be surprised. I didn't really know what a pineapple tasted like until I moved down here. Now I love them, but.
And it's so fun. Like, I could talk about food for hours.
You know,
something I will say is like tamales, you know, tamales from one country to the next in this region aren't the same.
Yeah.
And traditional tamales, like I grew up in Texas, my tamales were not what I expected when I got down here. So the food is amazing. You have so many options and generally the locals are so happy and excited to share it with you. You know, it's, you know, tradition to pass along recipes and things like that down from generation to generation. So it has the love, it has just incredible flavor and spices and things like that. So I think that was the perfect way to end this presentation, you guys. Thanks so much. Those of you that are still on the line with us and those that had to jump off, we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us. But with that, we hope that you were able to get some great knowledge to take with you. And again, reach out to us if you feel the need to have any kind of extended conversation about your specific situation. Again, if you aren't looking at Central America as your next home or your next place, let us know and we can definitely put you in touch with people in other parts of the world. But Patrick, Andrea, any closing remarks from you guys?
The only thing I would say is that we will, this has been recorded, so anybody that missed it will get to watch it, and people that watch it can watch it again. And with the recording, Ellie, I guess we'll include the email address there just to make sure everybody has it with them. So once again, it's questions@ecovillages.life.
Yeah, perfect. Yes. Look for that email.
See you there here in Latin America.
Yeah, it'll be great to have you as neighbors.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Appreciate you supporting us and watching.
Bye.
Bye.